Okay, welcome everybody to the July 21st Edina Transportation Commission meeting. And I just want, for people who are watching this at home, we have gone to a quarterly taping schedule, so we're taped in, help me out guys, January, April, July, and October. Okay. All right, the first first business on the agenda is approval of meeting agenda. Well, let's do roll call first. Jack?
Sure. Member Bass?
Here.
Member Bonneville?
Here.
Member Braden?
Here.
Member Franzen?
Here.
Member Janevi?
Here.
Member McElveen?
Here.
Member Nelson?
Here.
Member Shear?
Here.
And Member Thompson?
Here.
Good, thank you. Next is approval of meeting agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move.
Okay, it's been moved. Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll go forward with the agenda as is. We might need to table something coming up when we get there, if our presenter is not available. Next thing, adoption of consent agendas. So what that means is if you need to pull either of these items off of the agenda for discussion, now's the time to do it. Does anybody want to pull off the approval of minutes to make edits? Okay, I do. Okay, good. We'll get to that. And traffic safety report. Does anybody have comments? I just want to get an idea of what comments or questions about that. Okay. All right, so we'll leave that one. So to the minutes, Catherine, you had some changes?
Yes, I just wanted an edit to the minutes under the discussion on the France Avenue study. That the France Avenue study was commissioned by Hennepin County's Housing, Community Works, and Transit Department and the City of Edina, but it is unknown whether it has the support of the Public Works and Transportation Departments at Hennepin County.
Okay. And that language was sent in advance?
Yes,
so
in an
Jackie, you
email.
have that? Okay. I think I had a question about Section 3, approval of meeting agenda. It's a real minor thing, but we have in the first paragraph, it says Chair Janevi moved, and then no vote is shown. And then in the third paragraph, Commissioner Franzen moved. And then we have a second and a vote. And I don't remember the exact flow of information, but typically if there's a motion, did we not approve
the amended agenda?
We did, so.
I think I moved your change.
Right, that's what I think happened too. So it should be Chair Janevi suggested a change of the meeting agenda, and then in the final paragraph, move to approve the amended, or the meeting agenda as amended. Does that make sense to people? Just for order? Does that work? Okay. And then in C, so this is 6C on page 2, bike boulevards, second paragraph, last sentence. I may have conveyed that the plan didn't do enough for biking, but I think more the focus was that it did not meet the intended goals of the funding. So if people are okay with that change, strike did not do enough for biking and change to did not meet the intended goals of the funding. Would that be okay? All right. That's all I have. Welcome.
Sorry.
That's okay. Would anybody, anything else on the minutes? Okay. Would anybody like to move them as amended? So moved. Okay, it's been moved, seconded? It's been seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Nobody, so it passes. Thank you. Community comment is next. See no one here to speak, we'll move forward. Reports and recommendations. So, do you want to catch your breath before this, or you're ready to go?
Why don't you, sure.
Okay. Anna's going to give us a presentation on transportation options for seniors, which is her specialty, right? Your professional focus. And the thought behind, one of the thoughts behind this is, as our ordinance talks about all modes, all users and abilities, and to be mindful of the all users and all abilities part. And I think you will help us develop that mindfulness further.
I have two different handouts there. I don't know that there's quite enough. They sent me what they had.
Okay. Thank you. And let's make sure that Jack gets one of each. He needs one.
And I have an extra one. I can give him. I've got one here.
Okay.
I've got one here. I'll give him.
Okay. Yeah, we just need a public copy.
I'd requested extra so we could leave public copies, but they didn't have enough.
Oh, yeah, we need them to send them this way.
Sorry, I didn't split it. That one's better? Can you hear me on that? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Genevieve, for inviting me to say a few words here today. And what I'm hoping is maybe this will be one, and maybe I can get another chunk of time at a later date for some more topics, because really this issue is somewhat complex. And due to the summer schedule and my traveling schedule, I've kind of focused just on one topic, which is really transportation alternatives. When we look at the issues in Edina, as we want to have a walkable community and a drivable community, and we want to have a safe community for people to be aging in place. I could have buried you with statistics on the aging population right now, but I just chose one, which is looking at the National Household Transportation Survey. I did pass out for you a couple of briefs that you might be interested in taking a look at. These are from AARP. They're current public policy briefs that just came out, and I actually spoke with the author of this in preparation for this talk to try to figure out what are some of the key issues that we should be focusing on as a forward-thinking community that wants to make sure people can age in place. And it's interesting how spot on we are right now with what we're looking at and really what we want to be looking at. When I've seen the aging demographic projections shown in various different ways of slicing statistics, it's like a great big bump going down a snake. And it's really the aging baby boomer. And the percentage of change we're looking at seeing in our communities, I think, is hard to really comprehend. And I think it's really true, and it's really coming. And looking at the National Household Transportation or Travel Safety Survey, one thing they looked at, when we look at the growth of seniors 65 and older between 2001 and 2009, there's a 2% annual growth or change. When we look at the next 15 years, it's going to grow 60%. That's 60. That's huge. The percentage of change we talk about in our driving literature, 1 in 4 drivers in the next, by the year 2030, they're saying 1 in 4 drivers will be 65 or older. That's 1 in 4. So if you think about your drive home, you think about as you're moving around, the percentages are huge. This is a great thing. This is not a negative thing. It's something that needs to be thought about in terms of the needs and the demographic change. What are the needs of the people in this age range to make sure our communities will allow folks to stay in place, stay in their homes, and age in their homes? So we really are going to need multimodal solutions to make sure that we are thinking about the vast needs of all the different people. When we think of complete streets, these ideas are fabulous. They're wonderful, and they're trying to take into account the environment. They're trying to take into account energy use. They're trying to have people be walking more. All of that are great goals. But when we're thinking of this 60% change of this group 65 and older, we have to really think about what are the abilities and needs of the seniors in our communities that are going to be residents, or we hope will be residents in our communities. We have to think about the transportation options for this group. What we typically say are there are significant changes that we have to be mindful of in physical abilities, vision, and cognition. Those are kind of the three buzz areas as we look at what does it mean as we look at a changing demographic. So we need to think about, if I focus, I'm just going to try to really focus on transit and transportation alternatives. The transit demands, when we think about, well, people can take a bus, people can use other modes of transportation. There's walking to bus stops, there's waiting at bus stops, there's standing for long periods of time. There are stepping up concerns, stepping down, stepping over. There are getting to the seat prior to movement. One of the reasons seniors don't like buses is they are afraid because the buses move before they're in their seat. And actually, there's studies to support they are injured. The injury rate, because the bus takes off before they're in their seat. Urgency, bladders. This is a huge issue. It's a huge issue with transportation alternatives. It's an issue if people are thinking of going shopping and they don't have the ability to wait the long wait that they have no control over between the time they leave their home and the time they have access to facilities. These are barriers that interfere with a person's ability to leave their home and to get engaged in the community. And certainly all the cognitive things of planning, problem solving, and judgment, which is why we look at a range of different support services if we think of transportation alternatives for a wide range of needs. When we think of assistance, some of the terms you'll see out there in the literature are things like curb to curb, which is really what a cab is. They pull up to a curb, a person gets out, they need to get themselves into their apartment. And when they come to pick them up, they wait at the curb till the person knows to come out. They walk out, they get into the cab. There is services called door to door, which means you have somebody that takes the person to their door and makes sure that they found their apartment, make sure they can get up and down the sidewalk. And there's arm through arm, which means you have a level of assistance that brings a person into their apartment, make sure they can get the door unlocked, make sure they're actually in there. And when they come to pick them up for their appointment, make sure they go up there and they knock on the door and give them that level of assistance. So there's a lot of different levels of assistance. There's a lot of different services that can be available in a community that really offers the full array of services that might be needed to age in place. And that's kind of the idea of aging in place. We talk about aging in place, but what does that mean? It really means we need to have a variety of services that really drill down to individual needs. Living Streets is a great start. It's a great start. And it was really interesting. I was talking with Jana, who wrote these articles for AARP. You'll notice that one of the things she first said was, a lot of communities are adopting Living Streets, or we went beyond that, with the Living Streets, so that has more diversity to it. She said, but nationally, less than 1/3 of those explicitly address the needs of older road users. Now, that's national statistics. I'd like us to be in the third that, I would like us to be in the third that is. I would like us to be thinking about, so that when we write articles on what Edina's doing, that we will have things that meet the needs of these diverse populations, which are a significant number of the citizens in our communities. So we'll really need to be thinking about what are the needs of that diverse population. I'm excited about the role of the Transportation Commission as we look at some of the changes proposed in Edina, because we have to look at the different sides. The example, the common one you hear is with roundabouts. They're great for reducing crashes. They increase the walking distance for pedestrians. There are two sides to these various issues. By the way, a number of seniors with a lot of mobility issues are still driving. People will drive longer than they will be able to walk a half a block. So the mobility needs, even for drivers that are driving on a very limited basis, are significant. The words that I would just like to present to the commission as we talk about these things, and I'm hoping these will become, there must be somebody we're waving at, are the 5 A's of senior transportation. This we're seeing in the literature a lot, and sometimes it helps us focus as to what we might be looking for. We need transportation services. In Edina, if we were to get a score of 5 out of 5, and actually they provide a tool to score our communities, and I could imagine realtors and various personnel starting to use some of these kinds of tools to measure our communities. These are some of the common words we're seeing, that we have available transportation, that we have acceptable transportation, that they're willing to use, that's sensitive, accessible transportation, adaptable transportation, and affordable. So these are the measurement words that we can be thinking about as a commission when we're looking at some of the options that might be offered to us. And I did bring a few handouts that I'll get copied from Jack that go into it a little bit more, and there's no lack of more detail on the websites if you want to look it up. So again, I'm wanting to really drill down into thinking. I could be thinking about people with disabilities. There's a lot of different target groups that we could be talking about, but I want to really focus on thinking about aging in place in Edina and making sure we have transportation options, because I think that would be a very meaningful focus for this group. We want to be making sure people can walk and bike and drive. I want you to think about scooters when we're thinking about these roads and these road designs. This is going to be an increasing, and golf carts. We've got golf communities, and in many communities across the country, we're seeing an increase of golf carts being the way people are getting to the store. Do we accept that? Is it okay? Do we know where they can park? Are we thinking about them on our roads? The licensing agencies are struggling with this now, because if people are no longer licensed to drive, they can use a scooter. So we're seeing increases in this. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a wonderful video of a community in Florida that has a company that is selling scooters. They look like Rolls Royces. They look like all sorts of things, and it's become the whole mode in their community of buying scooters. But we need to think about these kinds of modes. When we think of transit options, when we think of buses, people can take a bus. There's different words, and as we look at vendors, when we look at what we want, fixed route or kind of the bus route, there's flexible or circulator buses. And I'm hoping that I was talking with Mayor Hovland, and there might be an option for us to be looking at some kind of a circulator on-demand bus that we could be offering within Edina. That would be an exciting, that's one step that would serve the needs of a certain group of people so that they could choose to not drive on a certain day. And then paratransit is like Metro Mobility. Paratransit is a very specific population that it serves, and it's expensive. It's actually, the statistics on it, it's phenomenally expensive. There was a national study looking at the cost of paratransit systems, and they were, using very rough numbers, it's a tiny percent of their revenue. It's 20-30% of their expenses. So obviously, thinking that we're going to just grow paratransit as a resource for people who need rides is not prudent for communities. We really need to look at, and it's also not usually the mode of choice for seniors aging in place. So we need to be thinking about that. Cabs, I've been talking with people that I know in the community, and cabs, as much as we may think they're available, they're actually not very available in our community. They're very difficult for people to use, and people that I think of as skilled cab users describe the service in Edina as poor. It's not an uncommon rating around the country, and we need to be looking at what are some options, and there's some national models of really increasing cab sensitivity that are useful. And volunteer driver programs, which is what I want to focus on, just to make my point to this group. I would propose that this group explore thinking about Edina, considering getting involved with a volunteer driver program. There's a number of models nationally out there, and it tends to be, I think, in a community such as ours, it tends to be a more well-accepted and more flexible mode of transportation. People like to ride with others that pick them up. They like to ride in vehicles in the national studies, and we're seeing some real huge growth of the volunteer driver programs. So I want us to think about Oh, and I just had made the comment on there, on what I'm seeing in some of the national solutions that I was looking at for this. One is the circulator bus we talked about, so I think we should think about that. One, there's another offshoot of the Safe Routes to School program called the Safe Routes to Transit programs, and we could be looking at having a Safe Routes to Transit program, which is really trying to look at how do they get to the bus, what are their options, where would they rest, where would they wait, and then the volunteer driver programs. I've got some materials for you that you can take a look at, and I think we should just consider there's a number of models out there for volunteer driver programs, and what I do know is Carver County is looking very closely at volunteer driver programs right now, as is another group in St. Paul. And so right now we've got some, and this group in St. Paul has money right now that they've gotten for exploring volunteer driver programs. So there's an opportunity to be partnering with other communities that might be looking at this, which is good, because sometimes, just like with 9/11, the central call-in station is the most expensive part of volunteer driver programs, or the most difficult. The volunteer parts can be more community-based. So Beverly Foundation has now, this is a screenshot of their website for just the volunteer driver turnkey kits. This is developed with such great energy across the country that we are really seeing a lot of models that can be, a lot of resources that can be borrowed and replicated. We don't have to start from scratch. And probably one of the Cadillac programs, I think, if you want to think of being able to become a member of a volunteer driver program, is called ITN America. This is a volunteer driver program that's completely structured. Some of the examples of this program are people could, if they can donate their car and catch it in for rides. So they can, and they'll use that car within the system for giving people rides, having another person drive it. You can give gifts of rides to your friends. You can buy people vouchers for rides. They have stores that are members of ITN, and so if you go shopping at this store, the store gives you the ride there for free, or they give you a discount if you buy your groceries. They've got a whole myriad of incentives within the community to support the volunteer driver program, to support the rider and the people that are volunteering. I could right now start banking rides for when I'm going to need them. So if I started giving rides now, I'd be starting my bank, or I might be giving my bank to you, Nate, because I wanted to be helping you and your family, and I could be giving rides and donating my ride bank to others. I could be storing them for myself. I could be giving them to my dad. I could be supporting my dad in Orlando because they have an ITN by donating rides. So it's a very interesting, complex system. But just to be aware that there's everything from a faith-based community with 1 car and 10 rides to these massive, large volunteer driver programs. I think we should be in the front end of things. I think Edina has a lot of people that would be interested in a safe, convenient, person-centered way to get around so they can stay in their communities. Fiscally, it translates to money. My dad used to tease that every time he left the house, it cost him $20. You can tell he's been gone for a while. I think it'd be more now. But I think when our seniors, if they don't get out to our stores, they aren't spending our money. If they're not getting their hair done, they're not spending their money. If they're not getting to the store, they're not doing what they want to be doing. We're not getting the economics of having those people in our communities. So my goal today was just to talk about rides. And I steal this from Joe Coughlin from the MIT Age Lab, because he likes to end with this, and I'm just shamelessly borrowing it from him. And he says, until on a hot Sunday afternoon, which I think we're having plenty of right now, and I have a hankering for an ice cream cone, and I can just go there on a whim, we don't have transportation options that are available for all the people in our community. And so that's kind of a goal to think about. Can people go out for ice cream whenever they want, whether they're a driver or not, whether they need to use transit or not? And I think Edina should be thinking about making sure we are a transit-friendly community. So that's my point for today. Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
The ITN, sorry, my voice is gone. The ITN, is that a nonprofit, or how is that organized?
Both. I think they have both sections. I think they have I think that It is, what is their word on here? It was started, it's intended to be for-profit. Well, I'm not sure if for-profit is the right word, actually. It's intended to be sustainable without government funds. It's supposed to be self-sustaining, is one of their goals. It was their first national nonprofit transportation network for America's aging population. So it's a nonprofit, but it has some different, there are some different models within it.
Can you describe generally how the volunteers work? Do they just call up, or are they on duty, or how do you have any idea how that works?
I haven't actually been in the main center of one of these. My impression is it can vary somewhat with the size of the community that gets involved with it. But basically, there's a dispatch system, and that's part of what you pay for in the membership, is a dispatching system that is fair, because you have to cover a lot of hours and a lot of days to promise rides. A person would call in and say, I need a ride. Depending on the robust, how good your program gets, it ideally would be very spontaneous. I need a ride in a couple hours. Or you could be planning, I need a ride to the doctor on Tuesday. And with the ITN, it's all volunteer drivers. It's a volunteer driver system, so a person in a vehicle comes up and pulls up to your house, and they pick you up. There's sensitivity training, so they're trained. Different volunteers would be comfortable. Some would be comfortable with the door-through-door, so they would go up to your house and get you and bring you to the car. Others, if they're not comfortable with that, would take a ride where they're using a curb-to-curb service, where they can pull up and the person comes out and gets in the car. That's where some of that language matters. But with the ITN model, there's a dispatcher, and they send a person out to that home. As these programs grow, you can build a relationship with the driver. You might tend to have, Mrs. Jones will bring Mrs. Anderson to her hair appointment twice a week or twice a month or whatever. So it can become very personal that way.
The Veterans Administration has a van for every county in Minnesota, or maybe more than one van in some cases, and they have regular scheduled trips from there to the VA to bring disabled veterans like myself to the VA. Yep. From those counties. There has to be a way, and I'm not sure exactly how it works, to contact the drivers who are regularly driving every week and to be picked up and so on. And they have a way of working their schedule out while they're at the VA so that they can finish during the day in such time that they can take their shuttle all the way back to their county.
Right. That's a system that's like a paratransit system within the VA system. People can get to the medical appointments. And don't get me wrong, when I talk about, one of the things that I find fascinating is you'll talk to one group that says we have no transportation options in our area. If I were to print out all the transportation options that you described for Edina, it would be a stack this thick. If you are looking at certain groups that are eligible for certain types of transit. The problem is eligibility. The problem is they're not spontaneous. They're not for grocery shopping necessarily. They're for different populations, for different specific needs. So one of the funded programs was United We Ride, and that's a website you can take a look at. United We Ride. It was one of the government funded websites because the goal was to try to break down these eligibility barriers. People might have 4 vans that could take them to the store, go by their house, and they're not eligible to get on it because of what they qualify for. So that project was trying to help be able to pick people up out of your system. You're absolutely right. The VA has that. There's a number of different systems like that for different niche groups. And one of the issues with that is if you think of your ice cream cone, you need it 9 to 5. So don't be wanting an ice cream cone at 8 at night. So you have to be thinking about, I always say I do not aspire in my old age to have my recreation being going to my doctor, because I would like other options to get out of my house than that. But it will take years of our work. Right now for you guys, one of the statistics the National Institute on Aging is predicting projecting is that all of the women sitting here will be outliving their driving life by 10 years, and the men by 6, because we live longer. But what that means is for my parents' generation or their parents, they intended to drive till they, as we kind of tease in my line of work, drive to their funerals, but they kind of did. The idea that they had to stop before they died was not something that had to be pondered. We didn't have the volume of people. There's a number of factors. But in our generation and moving forward, when we're looking at 1 in 4 drivers being, as we look at this aging baby, the demographics, as we look at our congested communities, we're looking at people not being licensed to drive for a period of time, and we're not used to that. So think about your own houses. I did a walkability survey for my house, and my house is called Car Dependent. And I think I sent out that website. You can look up your house and measure it. I'm called Car Dependent. There's nowhere I can safely walk in the criteria for walking from my house to a store. I don't have anywhere that I can get to close enough. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Certainly opened my eyes to a part of transportation I never really thought about. And I have a couple of questions. One is the golf carts.
Yeah.
Are they legal on the street in Minnesota? I know
Well,
they're all over the place in Arizona.
They absolutely are all over the place in Arizona, and legal is going to be a question our licensing agencies will struggle with. They are, but there are fine lines in there. It doesn't mean we don't see people on their lawnmowers get into the store, because they do. And it sort of depends, again, even when we talk about some of the enforcement issues, it depends on what where we draw some of those lines, but yeah.
Okay. And
They have special privileges in the Villages in Florida. It's northwest of Orlando. If you've been there, it's an amazing sight to see this. They even have parking stalls in front of many of the stores for carts that have priority even over handicapped.
Absolutely.
I wonder if they sell snow tires for them. And then a question, there's some good data here in these AARP handouts, but I wondered if anybody's looked at what time of day seniors need to travel or want to travel. Ideally, you can go anywhere at any time, but it seems to me, just from looking on the streets, that there's a lot of seniors driving around Edina, like from 10 to 2. And avoiding rush hour. Is that the case? Has anybody looked at that?
I could bury you in handouts on this information, because it's interesting. When I got involved in this about 15 years ago, we talked about not enough information. Now we're so inundated with information, but we've got good data on a lot of these answers or questions, and I'd be happy to help find the right answers. But yes, and the words around that are, we talk about seniors tend to be, as a group, really good stewards of their own abilities and desires. They tend to what's called self-limit, which means they recognize their night vision isn't so good, so they drive during the day. Seniors, by and large, make really good choices. So part of what we need to do is allow them good choices. Some of the things we'll talk about is how are they going to get to the opera? How do they get to the concerts downtown? They might want to not drive at night, but they either have to give up Orchestra Hall or they have to drive. And so they drive, and they'll tell you, some will tell you, I wish I didn't have to drive. I don't feel comfortable. But they have to get there. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of natural self-limiting, which is why some of the innovative programs, one group works really hard with school bus systems to give senior transit during the day when the buses are sitting, because that's when they need
You have
more.
all those drivers who are not driving, the licensed school bus drivers
That's right.
available from 10 to 2.
And that's what some of these United We Ride projects are. And you can, as a community, we want to start exploring some of these models. I brought a couple of these books. I'm not really wanting to tout just AARP. I just happen to have a bunch of their resources with me, because there's a number of organizations that do this. But this is called Promising Approaches for Promoting Lifelong Community Mobility. And there's a number of models of just what you're talking about that are highlighted in these. And if you want to take a look at these, they were out of print. I tried to order one for each of you, but they were out. I mean, they're restocking, but they were out right now, and I tried to get them. Yes, there are the trick is making our models match the needs within our community. So even on that Beverly website, what you can start with is a survey to find out what people are needing and what they're looking for.
I want to thank you for this presentation too, because I just think it's critical for us to start thinking about, and probably well past time for us to be planning for this in our community. I love the idea of a volunteer driver program, and I think a more formal program sort of fits with some of the values in our community, which is a pride in our independence, and at the same time, a lot of social capital, where I think people would really be interested in supporting a program like that. I do want to get your sense of given the sort of burgeoning demographic shift, whether you feel a program like that, even a formal one, could really accommodate what the needs are going to be. And just thinking back to one of your slides that outlines sort of all the possibilities, and I guess it seems to me that we need to really be thinking about a comprehensive approach that does include also public transit options like a circulator system, in addition to a volunteer ride program. And the other thing that I'll say before, I'd love to hear your comment on that, Elin. And then the other thing I'll say is I would love to see the Transportation Commission champion this sort of planning, and I think it would be a concrete, really tangible service to the community.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. I've been thinking long and hard, putting more time into thinking about, what do I really want to, because I think for my opportunity to speak with you, I wanted to have an opinion. I think this community would be really the right place for a volunteer driver model. And I can get for you, and part of what Jana and what I was working on coming up with is there are a number of communities of similar demographics to Edina that have done it. And I think it's worth looking at what those are. So I'm not proposing these ones I'm giving you. I just wanted to give you an idea that there's models out there. I do think that the studies are showing that seniors want to ride with somebody they know, or they want to ride in a vehicle. They want the flexibility. They want on-demand. They want to be able to do that. One of the challenges volunteer driver programs have is enough volunteers, because as we are working, we don't have the number of people at home. Our seniors are the volunteer drivers. I mean, we have volunteer drivers that are in their late 90s that are volunteer drivers, and it's a great, healthy activity for people that are able to do that. So I think it's a viable way to thing to look at, and I think it would match our community. I was excited to hear of Carver County's interest. I was excited to hear that there's a community, like I said, in the Northeast that's looking at ITN, because I think there could be wisdom in partnering, because to help have more support for the infrastructure of a volunteer program, even driver program, even though nucleuses of it might be just very local. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
I think that once you reach retirement age, we find out that our siblings and our relatives are in need a lot, and we are volunteers whether we like it or not. And that was the case for us today. We did some driving today to take care of some family problems, and that's something that just you have to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And part of what we try to also help families see, help youth, help our high schoolers see that giving gifts of transportation is a really good thing, and it's a really nice way to get to know. There's one group that calls it a mentoring program, that the senior is the mentor to the kid who gives the senior a ride is to learn from them. So they match up. I'm interested in engineering, and so I'm going to match you up with giving this engineer a ride, and you can learn about engineering. Cool concept. Turns it on its side in terms of how it's labeled and represented.
I was peeking at some of the materials that was in front of us, the demographics for the city, and I noticed that 28% of the residents here in Edina are over the age of 65, so I think you're making a really good case, and it's really timely that we start talking about this. I was wondering, do you know, or maybe someone else on this city staff knows, whether or not there has been any survey specifically of that age group, the 65 and older, the seniors here in this community, to find out what they are doing about transportation and what their interests and concerns are? That might be a good idea to get kind of more specifics about this city and the older residents and what they need in terms of transportation.
Do you know, Jack, of anything?
I'm not aware of any particular study directly targeting that group. I know we've, this study we'll talk about in a few minutes, the Quality of Life survey that was done kind of hints at that, but nothing to that level of detail that you're indicating.
It's a good place to start. I shuddered. I almost called you today, and then I thought, oh, I just can't. There's a grant proposal out that's due the 28th of July to get money to be exploring transportation options in our communities. The hard part is getting, that I was doing some research. I went, oh Lord, but I did copy it off, so you can take a look at it. If not that, it represents that the government is putting money into communities doing just what we're talking about. They want us to be doing what we're talking about. They want people having rich lives. They want people getting where they want to go. Transportation was identified as the #3 issue at the White House Conference on Aging in 2005. 100 priorities, days of meetings, priorities after priorities, voting. Transportation was #3. That's huge. That's huge. Seniors said, I want to get around. I want to be able to get around. Whether I'm walking, driving, or riding, I want to get around.
One of the difficult things to consider here, and there are several, and maybe more, a lot more than several, is that at the minute you have a volunteer group doing any of this sort of thing, you have competition with the cab companies and the bus companies who are trying to do this for money. There needs to be some kind of study done to decide how best to approach this based on those problems.
All of the problems you can come up with have been thought about, trust me. And we can get consultants in here, or we can get people to talk to us about how they've explored these things. I wish cabs were so prevalent here that we'd be competing with them. But you're absolutely right. All of these concerns are very valid, and they're very important to work out. Beverly Foundation has committed their foundation to looking at transportation alternatives, and they really have zeroed in on transportation alternatives and volunteer driver programs. And I've been fortunate to be a reviewer for their Star Awards. They award innovative programs every year, and I've been a reviewer for the last 3 years. And it's wonderful to see the innovative transportation programs that are being created around the country. It's inspiring, and I'd be happy to try to share some of those examples with you. Many of them, they embrace the cabs as part of it. I mean, these don't have to be completely exclusive one from the other, because they're all different ways that a senior could have options and control. What we need is if I want to call a cab, that I can get one. Or if I want to call for a volunteer driver, I can get one. I think there's a lot of room in this sandbox to play. I think there's a lot of need. I think our trick is to really have some competition and have some options in our community. And I want to emphasize that, in my opinion, I want people to have choice. In my Pollyanna world, I want people to retain their license for a long time, and they might drive less and less frequently. But they don't have to give up their license. It's not like you drive until your last day of driving, and then you have to sort of it's all about loss and have alternatives. And that's a lot of times what has been the cloud over the idea of transportation alternatives. The idea of aging, healthy, aging in place is kind of what you said. We might drive during the day to a coffee, we might drive to our groceries, we might drive to our errands during the day, but we want options so we can do things at night, so we can do things on weekends, so we can go downtown for an appointment in rush hour, so that we have options. And that's why we want to be building a variety of things.
I want to say thank you again, too. And I had an experience today that you brought up scooters, and I was roughly 71st in France, and there was a man on a scooter, and I didn't know if he was a pedestrian or what he was. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely,
And so I didn't
absolutely.
know what side of the road he was supposed to be on. I was only thinking about it in terms of the kind of discussions we have here. And so what that kind of leads me to is, when the code is rewritten, it's my understanding that the city code will sometime in the near future be rewritten. It will be important to make sure that there's not something that will limit, scooters or golf carts, whatever can legally be on the road, I don't know. But make sure that our code doesn't interfere and that it accommodates, these different options.
Or our paths, or our sidewalks
paths,
accommodate.
yeah.
When we're thinking of getting narrower for the environment and for drainage, there's just multiple factors when we think about what the users group, and some of these, the safe routes to transit show maps of where you might go for a little more width in those areas so people of different mobility devices can get themselves to bus stops. There might be a reason that we want to be careful what need trumps what as we stack them all up. They're all important, but there are implications.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else? Good. Well, I know it's a first discussion, and thank you so much. You're very welcome. Now we'll continue it through many meetings, I'm sure. So I'll let her get back. That was good. I like that. And actually, you know what? It's a really good segue to our next topic. Our next topic is the Human Services Task Force, and you all got an email from our city manager. There is a small group that is, we've been requested to have a volunteer from this group who wants to meet for maybe about 5 hours in the early fall to make recommendations for how the city should spend its human services funding. And I could see where a transportation advocate could be very helpful on that. But I wonder if anybody has some interest in volunteering for that. Really? Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All
Unless
right.
someone else has a desire to do it. But it's just, a couple meetings to evaluate some.
Right. All the information I have is right here. I think it's a new way of doing things. Is that right?
That's correct. And I don't know all the details about it, but council's asked that some of this get turned over to some of the commission members here to help facilitate and direct some of the potential funding sources or funding directives. In this case, ultimately, the council will make the final decision, but it'd be this collective group that would help to kind of guide that path.
Okay. Would these be evening meetings, do you know, or?
My guess is they would be. Most things are.
Okay.
I could volunteer to be your backup if you wanted a person to.
Oh, that's all right.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just had a question to Jack. Do you have any idea what the outsourced services are? I'm just out of curiosity.
I apologize. I'm not familiar with what those services are. I could certainly circle back. We have a little bit of time on this. They need a final decision for a member by the end of August, so I could certainly send out some additional information if people are curious before they raise their hand and volunteer.
Well, I think
For my part, I was just going to say, for my part, don't worry about it. I'm sure you've got plenty to do, and it seems like we have a willing volunteer. So.
Good. Okay. No, I don't think we need a motion. Tom, did you have a question?
I just thought that it would be good if a Human Services Commission member were to come to this meeting one day and tell us what the spectrum of services that they deal with, what they are. That would be interesting. I'm on the board of Wayside House in St. Louis Park, and that's a lot of human services that they give to certain demographic people. And it's something that I think would be worthwhile for us to hear about.
I definitely agree. And with the presentation earlier, I was thinking, this is not something that is solely in the lap of transportation. It involves human rights and relations, probably community health, the senior center, the resource center at the district, and it's one of those initiatives that brings everybody together. Certainly, like with Living Streets, we can take a lead, but we, involve everybody. So I'm hearing Ann's our volunteer and Aileen's our backup. All right? Do we need a vote on that one? I don't think so. We've got volunteer. Good. All right, thank you. Thank you both. The next part of our agenda is just more discussion focused. There wasn't much in your packet. Jack put together a memo with a little brief paragraph on each thing. The first one is the format for forwarding recommendations to the council. And this is something that I think we need to have, we need to be clear on. In our last meeting, we made 2 recommendations. Those have not gone to the council yet. The council has had 2 meetings since our last meeting. One reason they haven't gone to the council yet is because we don't really have a format for forwarding our recommendations. The minutes are not the right format. And so we need some suggestions on how the process can work. One suggestion would be that somebody here would volunteer to take notes, and when we have a recommendation to be the one responsible for transcribing that, so that we don't have to rely on Sharon, who has other obligations every day. I don't know, where's some people's thoughts? Ann?
Just off the top of my head, I have a suggestion. At our agency, we have, the Transportation Advisory Board and its Technical Advisory Committee. And I know when there is an action that comes out of the Technical Advisory Committee that has to kind of move ahead to the Advisory Board, it's written up as something called an action item, and it states right up front what the action is, the motion, and then there's a brief description of it, and then any discussion or the purpose or an explanation. And it's just kind of a one-page thing that documents the action taken by the subcommittee and then kind of forwards up the line of approval. So that might be an option. We develop something along those lines.
Is there a set process that goes with that? So, for example, let's say there's a week lag between the 2 bodies meeting. Is it guaranteed that action item will go forward at the first meeting, or?
Well, the way that these committees meet, the Technical Advisory Committee happens to meet on the first Wednesday of the month. So any actions taken there would then be transmitted to the Advisory Board, which meets on, I believe, the 3rd Wednesday of the month. So there's a 2-week lag. So it works out. And then sometimes those actions are then forwarded on to the next group, and it just kind of goes up higher in the hierarchy of approval. But it is a way to get it documented in a discussion and the purpose of the motion. And it's just one suggestion on kind of the mechanics of how we might be able to deal with this.
I think that's a great idea. Together with that, there are some obvious things. Like, for example, nothing should go to the City Council without it being approved by a vote of this Transportation Commission. And furthermore, I think it should go from our chair to the City Council. While it may be coming from the chair, we know it will probably go to the secretary to the board, to the secretary to the City Council. And that's probably proper that route be handled. But I like her idea that it creates an action item, and that action item then at some point has to be acted on. You can't just ignore it. And we could be ignored rather easily.
And when you mean vote, when you say voted on?
By this group.
Right. So let's say we have a vote.
Somebody here may have maybe I have a recommendation. And I'm able to convince more than half of you that this is a good idea, and there's a vote taken, and it gets approved, and then you would take that, and I guess it would be your choice as to whether or not the person who created an idea or the persons who created an idea want to be with you to support you if you're going to, say, take it to Scott Neal or however route that you would take from there.
Okay, but you're not conceiving that once it's typed up, it needs to be approved again, because that would delay us by a month?
No,
Okay.
it would be approved here in a verbal way.
Verbal way, and then it gets typed up and then
Yep.
forwarded, okay. Yep.
Is there a standard written format that commissions and committees use to forward action items to the council?
It is kind of across the board. Everybody has a somewhat unique way of doing that. I know with the boards and commissions coming more in line with some of the council process, like our agendas are more like the council agendas. I think maybe at some point we'll get there, but right now the discussion is how would this board like to do that, and maybe we can be the model for what the new normal would be for the rest of the boards and commissions as well.
Tom's point about, approval, reapproval, I think we need to flesh out that process because if we simply write out the motion that we've passed, it doesn't really give the council any background information. But the more you write up after the meeting, after our meeting, the more chance there is for variation between that and what we actually talked about. Right. So perhaps recirculating that after the meeting for commission members to comment before it goes forward. In my work, there's a standard format. Everybody knows how to write it up. It's, describe the situation, 1 or 2 sentences, a paragraph of background, a paragraph of your assessment of the possible solutions, and then a recommendation. And if you go over a page, you have to show up and present it yourself.
Just 1 second. So what I'm hearing is that more than just the recommendation, but also should include the findings or the basis for the recommendation.
It's a way to do it. It works when we have to forward something to a higher level. They have a 1-page about where did this come from, why are you recommending this?
Okay.
I was just wondering if Mr. Sullivan can describe how the Planning Commission normally operates, because I'm sure they have a fairly robust system for providing recommendations to the council.
That's a good question. They have a very, I'll call it a more robust type of system. The reason being is a lot of their stuff is tied more to the state statute and the code, and a lot of times the presentations or the packet forwarded from the Planning Commission recommendations on the council are much more than the 1 page is indicated. They're, almost a complete total reworking or a full document again. And I think the essence that we were talking about here is just a quicker kind of a format for doing that. So in their case, it's certainly a complete document that is then presented again by the Planning Commission liaison, or in this case, Planning Commission, the city planner as well. So it's a little more robust system than we would probably be looking at, but potentially if we wanted to go that direction, we could go more lengthy as well.
What I've noticed from reading those Planning Commission reports is that first of all, they have the statutes that require the progression of the thing within 60 days or something, so it has to move forward. But then the other thing is there would be a staff report that often is pretty long that includes a summary of the discussion in the Planning Commission. And I think that might be one thing we're trying to avoid, because we don't need to give people more work to do. And it seems that if we figure out a format that we all understand, we can put our recommendations in that format and we can convey them directly and not have to wait for the minutes to be done. And when something is kind of time sensitive, being able to operate with that self-sufficiency is a good thing. So, I mean, I would love to see the format that you use. I'd love to see the format that you use, and maybe if we have some models to look at, we can, more firmly define something that can be used down the road. Okay? And if anybody else runs into some other recommendation, this is the standard cover sheet that appears on most everything that the council gets. Is that correct? And if something is for discussion or recommendation or motion, then that means it actually gets put on the agenda. And if it's for information, then it may not be on the agenda. So we'd want to be mindful about the times that we are just trying to keep them in the loop, or when we really want this to come forward for a discussion. Is there anything else on that? No other thoughts? Okay. The next thing is the TLC grant update. So Transit for Livable Communities, that is for the bikeway from Xerxes to Wooddale on 54th, south on Wooddale, east on Valley View, east to south on Valley View to 70th. And do you want to take a shot at the update?
Yes. Excuse me. If you remember back at our last meeting, we had Steve Rusk from the TLC to talk a little bit about, I'm sorry, Steve Clark, excuse me. Thank you. To talk a little bit about this issue in a little more detail, and that we're getting near the end of the proposal or the sunset deadline for funding, and they would, Steve and the Transit for Livable Communities group would like to understand where the city stands on applying those funds, and with some of the discussion with the ETC and then again with the BETF recently, it's becoming more clear as to what they're going to require from the city, and the next step in this is that the BETF, Bike Edina Task Force, has a workshop on August 3rd with the City Council, and I think that's one of the major topics at that meeting. So Manager Neal and Council and the Bike Edina Task Force will be able to talk that over that evening, and we're anticipating a response to, or a formal response to TLC the following day with kind of the intentions of the city. And I guess that's a little open-ended at this point, but there's some sticking points that that we've kind of come across. The TLC is requiring dedicated bike lanes, at least to the best of our ability, dedicated bike lanes on Wooddale, and then some kind of lane conversion on the Valley View section. Currently it's a 3-lane with a center left turn lane. They're really requesting that it goes down to 2 lanes, and we're looking at the viability of that from an engineering standpoint, and the viability of Wooddale with bike lanes, what that does to parking, and what the interest of the city is in moving this forward, and is this the right time and location to use these funds. And I think that'll be kind of borne out in the next council meeting or next council work session.
So last time we voted in support of the using the funds the way that they were intended to be used, and that was one of the recommendations that didn't get forwarded to the council. I think one thing that I was at the BETF meeting, so I'll just do my BETF update as part of this. TLC's been incredibly patient and flexible with Edina, and wants to see progress, and progress was defined, a place to start was the 3-2 conversion on Valley View, which would mean the elimination of the continuous turn lane and bike lanes, with the understanding that there may be spots where there needs to be a turn lane. And I think going into the August 3rd meeting, people are really going to need to know whether Edina has the time and interest to pursue that, what would need to be done specifically, what kind of study would need to be done. Because we've weighed in support of this project, the ETC has weighed in support of the project, and the council has. and yet we're up against a really tight timeline. And the steps that need to be taken aren't steps that we can do. They're steps that need to be done, but we can't do them. The ETF can't do them, and the council can't do them. So, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts to forward to the council on that, but go ahead, Tom.
I guess I've been wondering when you see that this has been years that have gone by, why is it that BETF has been somewhat ambivalent toward this whole thing? What I mean by that is they haven't forced the issue too much and caused action to be taken at city council level. Maybe it's because of what we talked about in our last comments here, where they don't have a formal way of presenting this to the city council. If the money was in place, this could have been done. And I guess I'm wondering, I don't see a lot of bicyclists on Valley View heading towards Southdale. Maybe today things have changed a little bit. I see a lot of bicycles on Wooddale, and there are some other ones, but 44th Street has more bicycles than any of them, I think. But the issues are here that there hasn't been a strong enough effort to go forward with this. And maybe BTEF could be asked to head up the whole thing and to actually come forth with maybe a design of what they would prefer to see and the routes that they would prefer to see if they're different from what was agreed to years ago.
Well, the BETF tried. A couple of things happened. Our liaison, who was a fabulous person, Dwayne Lindbergh, passed away. And then other members of the BETF took up this, and it was difficult to get information on it. So it is not for the BETF not trying. There was constant pushing for information and involvement on this. So I think in terms of what we are right now, we're up against a timeline, and the preliminary study contains something that TLC supported. What was more recently brought forward to the council is not something that matches the funding goals, and so I think that was one of the easiest parts of this would be Valley View. And it's not easy, but it probably is easier than Wooddale will be. And so the thought was by Valley View would be one place that the city could show commitment to this and could show action. And so that's what needs to happen between now and August 3rd. Yeah. Michael?
Thanks. Question, I guess, for Jack is, it sounds like there's a lot of support, especially for the Valley View piece, but there's a question of going from the 3-lane to the 2-lane. Is that something you guys have vetted, or where are you guys at with that process if the timeline is up, August 3rd?
This section of roadway was reconstructed, forgive me, somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago, so relatively recently. It was designed at that section based on the engineering recommendation at the time. We have looked and started to flesh out the ability to minimize that down to a 2-lane section at this time. Haven't finalized that, but kind of using the background information, knowing that it was designed that way based on the traffic levels, based on the turn movements that we had at the time, it's somewhat consistent to expect it wouldn't change a lot now. I don't know that at the end of the day, that 3-lane to 2-lane conversion, although it's a component, there's still issues, very glaring issues at the crosstown bridge. And what do you do when you get to that point? So there's, all along this corridor, there's, well, if we can get past hurdle 1, then there's a hurdle right next to it. And then if we get past that one, we're onto a third one. And money and willpower are the two issues that, will overcome those, crosstown being the more of the the dollar amount issue, and then more of the Wooddale be more of the, desire to remove parking. So the short answer is, at this point, I think staff recognizes that not a lot has changed in the corridor, so it's going to be difficult to justify the removal of that third lane. But we are investigating that and having some individuals help us with that.
So will you come forward by August 3rd with a recommendation, kind of outlining what steps have been taken and what the recommendation is, so that the discussion can be informed by that?
Yes, I think our Public Works Director, Wayne Houle, is working with both the TLC and with WSB, who the original proposal, or the most recent proposal the council was through, to see if we can't come to we can present our position prior to that, or at the August 3rd timeline.
I recall the discussion last month being about there was going to be some survey done or residents brought together on Wooddale to see if Wooddale residents were acceptable in looking at reducing the parking or eliminating parking. I guess number one is, has that been done? And
I'll finish up, I guess. Sorry.
The other was there was a potential reuse or a use of that pedestrian bridge over Crosstown as brought up as a possible solution to avoid the Valley View and Crosstown situation. And I don't know if that was looked at, making ramps, somewhat parallel to Crosstown to get up and over, and then back down on the other side.
The first item regarding a letter or open house, some kind of event with the parking concerns with the residents, that has actually been on hold because I think, to be honest, both TLC and the city are a little bit unsure on where each other's going. The $250,000 that are allocated to this is well under the ability to make modifications across town or make modifications to the bridge that you are alluding to. And so I think both sides are trying to, behind the scenes, a little bit figure these issues out and really define what are the minimum criteria for both parties. And I think we're getting closer there, but some of that's been fleshed out more recently, like they demand, or not demand, but are requiring a 3-lane to 2-lane conversion. And then what does that mean for the city? And we're now having to respond to that.
One thing that I remember Steve Clark saying is that they have people on staff that they can make available to help with the under Crosstown issue. They did preliminary work on that. And he showed, so I think the thought was that the bulk of money would have to go there. But if, it was also said at one point that the Sharrows Spike Boulevard idea, you could just put the $30,000 that was going to be spent on a consultant toward that. So, I mean, when it comes to money, obviously the bridge would be a lot more expensive. But the $250,000 plus whatever extra TLC might give, if they're really happy with what we propose, and anything extra that the city might have available. So it didn't seem like money was, except for the bridge, was the issue.
Chair.
Yes.
Could this be one of our, or maybe our very first recommendation to City Council, that if a study is taking place, question, will the money remain in limbo until the study is complete? The study being the holdup at Crosstown at Valley View. If this group were to assign it to them ourselves to look at it, and every person on this group studied that intersection by going there, getting on foot, and walking it back and forth a little bit, and seeing what ideas might come out of this, and then deciding whether or not a series of consultants might improve on what our idea might be. That we need to know whether or not that would work and hold off the cancellation of the money on August 3rd. It's kind of like the problem the state has.
whether, I mean, of course, the city can inform TLC that we're not going forward with it, and then TLC would reprogram the money. But one of the issues is that they could reprogram it anyway, and that's why we have this tight timeline. We're kind of in a situation where either the city shows TLC that it's committed to this and will take action now, or they'll reprogram the money. And in that, when the final date will be for that, we don't know. But the August 3rd was considered to be an extension. We got a deadline of more around the 21st of, well, today. And then August 3rd was the extension that our city manager requested. So that's the level it had to go to. Yes.
I think the route of this project, 54th Wooddale Valley View, I think remains a very valid route. There are a lot of people who could use that route to get to different places, the pool, the parks, up to the area closer to the schools anyway. I don't think that's changed. One thing that has changed is with the reconstruction of Valley View a few years ago, I don't bike on that section of road any longer. I used to. But since it went to 3 lanes with the center turn lane, traffic speeds are high, and there is no room between passing cars and the curb. So I go another way. And I would repeat our endorsement of that route and the conversion back to 2 lanes. There certainly people turn left off of Valley View. I don't know what the volume of left turns is, but having that entire center of the road taken up with a seldom used turn lane really has limited our options, and I, for one, don't bike there any longer. I would like to see some action by the city that really does express that commitment to move this forward, because it would be a real lost opportunity if we don't do something.
Do you want to make a motion, and then that motion could go forward to our August 3rd? Is that your time? Yes, you have to go soon.
That's my alarm.
Yeah. Then that motion could go forward for the August 3rd. So a recommitment to this project, and specifically help me with the wording here, commitment to the 3-2 conversion.
To move forward with that to endorse that as a first step in continuing our Transit for Livable Communities project, and to secure that funding to complete this project.
So that's a
So
motion?
moved. Yes.
Okay. Second? All right, any discussion on the particular motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you.
Who's hand carrying it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be there. And I think that we will, why don't we do our best to put it into a format that fits what we were talking about tonight?
Can you hear me? Do you need a formal request from this group to be able to hand carry it, since that's a change? You can just do that. Okay.
Because we voted.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Good. Okay. France Avenue corridor update, pedestrian bridge.
And remember, one of the things we just got on talking about was how to forward recommendations. And at the last meeting, one of the recommendations was to support significant enhancements to at-grade crossings along France Avenue from Crosstown down to 494. That was part of the recommendation. The other part was to, I guess, not supporting of the bridge. There's a bridge funding that's currently out there from the federal government with some local funding sources as well allocated to that. At this point, that's one of the recommendations. Let's go to council. But the second part of that is that staff is still moving forward with, at this point, getting an RFP out to consultants for some additional information. So I think we're taking both tracks here. The one track from the ETC level is to look at grades with more urgency, but yet at the same time, knowing that we have funding available, staff thinks it's appropriate to at least continue to explore what a bridge would look like, what the costs associated with that bridge would be, and how other individuals, other consultants may envision that conductivity. So I think we're going to, at least from our standpoint, from a staff standpoint, we're going to take both approaches as we move forward here. And certainly the direction from council was to have the ETC look at France Avenue and make some recommendations. And so that recommendation for the at-grade crossings will be forwarded to the council, and they can use that information as they start to see the RFPs come in and they start to understand what they want to have happen on that corridor.
We're also silent on this one. There's $1 million to $1.5 million in federal funds, is that correct? And the most recent estimates I've been given are the bridge would be $5 million.
Certainly three. The estimates have ranged, but certainly the $1.5 million or so that we currently have in federal funding would cover less than 50%. So yes, we're ranging from three to on the upside $8 million potentially. I think $8 million is high, but we've heard kind of 3 to 5.
And the council, have they committed these funds yet?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So they didn't commit the matching funds as part of the application for the funding, and this is HRA money, is that correct? The funding would come from TIF?
It's tied to the TIF district.
Okay. All right. I think one thing that I don't know why we're all so silent here, but I think part of it is that our it's not good when the council receives one track is just staff and then one track is ETC, and there's not a connection. And when there are still questions that this group has had about the bridge that aren't answered, and the RFP will go out, which moves it further down the process. The first time or the next time the council sees it, it could be, at what point? It could be, would it be the feasibility study? Would it be award of bid? And it's my understanding there has not been a public discussion of the bridge. What? Well, you're right. There was kind of as part of the promenade thing back in 2006.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go for it.
I move that the Transportation Commission once again reiterate our prior recommendation to the City Council that that particular bridge not be built for reasons of lack of information and high cost. Anybody want to add to that? It's fine with me.
I would add, also for lack of sort of public airing of the project, and perhaps this would be appropriate for our new format of action item / recommendation as well.
And I would add, for lack of at least known connectivity, right now we don't know there's a way to connect it to the trail. And also it will not very well serve people who want and need to be on France Avenue. For example, I saw a woman in a wheelchair today crossing France and couldn't get onto the sidewalk because of a road construction sign on the sidewalk, so she had to drive in France. Someone like her would not be served by this bridge because of it doesn't serve people on France. It's, a block off, in my view, from the drawings I've seen. So I would add lack of connectivity. Ann?
I think mostly in support of what you just said. I just don't understand the justification for it. we haven't heard from staff or anyone, on what is it, the big motivation, other than they were awarded the grant. This is a transportation enhancement back in 2007, and boy, I just haven't heard anything from anyone that really supports it and convinces me that there's still whatever need was, justified by awarding it. So, if it competed today, I don't know how well it would do, but I'd like more information on it, and whether or not the city truly supports having this kind of crossing at France at that location.
Certainly I'd like more information, but, if we're looking, and we're just kind of advising here, but the TIF dollars, and if it's such a great matching amount, there's still not sidewalks on both sides of the corridor. How can we get pedestrians that are already on that side, say the mall side, how do we get them into the mall? So I think there's a lot of other areas that would be better, I guess, utilized by pedestrians and connectivity. So that's just my thought. I might vote no against this just because, the two-track system, I guess there's some merit. I would like to see additional information, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
Yes, I just wanted to reinforce your lack of connectivity. I think that is, if there was a commitment with this, that it would hook with the trail. I mean, if there was a second part to a purpose for it, but I think we all reviewed those materials, and our conclusions, if I recall it right, where we couldn't figure out what it was coming from and going to. Mm-hmm. And so I would just want to, I think that for me is very strong. It's why we need more information and more purpose.
Mm-hmm. And yes, perhaps this is just beating a dead horse here, but I think it's a slight variation on the point. Even if there were connectivity there, I think that a bridge is not warranted for the usage it would get. It would just serve such a small segment of people along that corridor. It's not, I don't think it's a judicious, efficient use of public dollars, and I think they could be used, better spent in making accommodations that would serve more of the corridor.
Question, is Jack or someone else keeping track of all these reasons?
Well, we have the videotape.
Okay.
Which will come in handy this time.
Chair, just wondering if Mr. Sullivan can, I guess I'm kind of perplexed at what staff's motivation is. I'm just trying to understand, from our point of view, it doesn't seem like the two are a good use of our funds as a city. I'm just trying to wonder what the staff's justification is. Can you shed some light? There must be something that's driving the two-track idea that I'm not quite grabbing.
Well, to be fairly blunt about it, I mean, staff can have a different opinion than the ETC, and the council will make the ultimate decision on how we move forward. So I guess that's why we're not discounting the ideas of the discussion up here, and this will be actually beneficial, I think, to council for making a final determination. But from a staff perspective, this was early on when it was applied for back in 2007, there was a lot of desire to have more conductivity across France Avenue, to have additional abilities to get from west to east. At that time, the Three Rivers Park Trail location was not defined. Now, in hindsight, it may look like, the two don't line up as well. Our perspective is also maybe that, who's to say that we can't realign the Three Rivers Park Trail to meet this location. There's more federal funding tied to this location. It's almost impossible for us to relocate it. So our goal would be to look at the viability of installation and then look at the viability of relocating the trail. The trail is still a number of years out. The bridge is potentially a couple years out as well. So there is time to work a conductivity component of those two. The federal funding's there, the TIF funding's there. The TIF funding, unfortunately, can't be used for more standard at-grade type of improvements at this time. So, like I said, we're moving forward with knowing that we have this funding available, knowing that there was need for it. There was a lot of discussion about it during the 70th Street study, during some of the earlier Southdale studies, and it was has been indicated for a number of years as a potential, and we want to kind of fully flesh this out and bring it all the way to council and determine what the cost truly will be, and understand if it's the best direction for the community.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I think that actually helps me at least understand a little bit more. If it's more of a, there's still some doors open long term, that makes a big difference to me. And I think maybe part of this is we truly need to understand the cost before any final decisions are made. So regardless of what our preferred alternative would be at this time. So.
Yeah, I guess just a quick clarification. I understand the money is for this particular location. Is it only, how is that defined? Is it defined exactly where the 71st, 72nd crossing is, or is it anywhere crossing France Avenue?
With the federal application, the money is tied to a very specific geographical location, 72nd Street. It is possible to reapply for an exception or a variance on the location based on newer information, newer knowledge. I can't speculate on what the likelihood that then this project would that would get approved. I don't know any percentage is on that. Also, it tends to then be reevaluated as to the viability of the bridge in general, I would think, and how it would rank in the system. So certainly something that is an unknown as we were to try to progress on the path of sliding it somewhere along the corridor.
Could I ask a clarifying question? The TIF money, why can it not be used for on-grade crossings and enhancements?
I don't know the details on it, but quite honestly, our finance director is the one that's more tied to knowing and the legislative laws that were written for that TIF district. It's my understanding that is more of a massive overhaul of infrastructure and traffic patterns. Example that might be like the roundabouts that are on 70th Street, pedestrian overpass bridge, but additional lane configurations and or at-grade crossings don't fall into that more substantial reconfiguration of traffic patterns.
And then the other thing is I do agree with you that staff and the commission can go forward with different recommendations. I think it would be very helpful, though, to hear from the person who has the lead on this project to know what the thinking is. And that would give us the best ability to make the most informed decision. And I think the public deserves to hear about this project before it's at a point of decision-making. Because once it hits the council, that's not always the time for a careful look. And so I guess we'll move forward. Actually, we have to vote, right? Because we made a motion with all of those points. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Did we have a second? Do we need to restate the motion? No? We should restate the motion. To the best of my memory, we'll see how this goes. It was to restate our non-support, lack of support for the bridge at this location because of, and this is, you're going to have to help me out, a lack of public discussion about it, lack of connectivity, not the best use of the money, justification for it, questioning the justification for it, strong preference for on-grade.
For that intersection.
Yeah. What else was there?
Connectivity was mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. So do we have a second for the motion? Tom originally made it. Okay, it's been seconded. Any further discussion?
I guess I have some. I'm just curious if we've already made a recommendation at our last meeting.
And that's going forward to council. It hasn't yet, is that correct?
Correct.
So, I don't know, we've made the motion second, but there may not be a need for it, but just a reemphasis on it.
Yeah, I guess I personally am fine with the existing, statement that we made. I don't know if the, I guess I'm fine with that one.
I personally see benefit in letting them know why we aren't recommending moving forward with the bridge, what the thinking is. It's kind of the idea of making the recommendation and then the support for that recommendation.
I
Yeah?
agree.
Okay. So let's just go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Wait, how many did I hear? 2. Our bylaws technically require us to do a roll call vote in such a situation. So let's go ahead and do that then. Let's take the vote again.
Member Bass?
Aye.
Member Bonneville?
Aye.
Member Braden?
Aye.
Member Franzen?
Nay.
Member Nelson?
Aye.
Member Thompson?
No.
Member Genevieve?
Aye. All right, it passes. Thank you. Halen? Oh, we left one out.
Maybe because I got here late.
No.
Member Davis?
Aye.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Okay, temporary traffic control zones and temporary speed table. This can kind of be handled together.
Some questions were raised at the City Council meeting on Tuesday evening about road closed to through traffic, road closed signs. 2 examples of where we're detouring a large amount of traffic would be on France Avenue, 44th Street between France and Brookside, and then again on 70th Street between France and Highway 100. And some questions were kind of asked about what does those signs mean, and can we cross the street north and south even though the east-west directions, and some of the validity of that, those signage, and what more of an educational almost is of what some of that signage means. And from a staff perspective, there's obviously a lot of residents that try to use those roadways every day. Some in the neighborhood of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 cars a day travel on either of those 2 roadways. Both of those roads are detoured as we speak. 70th Street has a detour at 66th Street, and 44th Street has a 50th Street detour, none of which are ideal, but they are the best way to transfer traffic from one state aid route that runs east and west of our community through another state aid route, and trying to keep them off of our collector roadways and residential roadways. So I guess a question that kind of came up was, what does road closed to through traffic mean? What does road closed mean? And both of those signs you'll see on the different locations throughout these projects. And the first thing is road closed to through traffic is just that. If you're a traffic that isn't on that street because you live in one of those homes there or have to access one of those businesses that is on that section, then you shouldn't be on that roadway. Our police department has been called out a number of times this spring and summer to kind of oversee some of the traffic patterns that are going on out there, and have been kind of assessing the situation one at a time. When the sign says road closed, it truly means road closed. It means there's some activity up ahead that will prevent you completely from getting down that corridor, and it's best just to stay off that corridor altogether. Even as a resident who lives on there, I would certainly strongly urge them to understand where the activity is happening. In most cases, that's a ditch right in the middle of the roadway. Other activities that would be underground activities that would prevent traffic from entering an area. Question also come up quite a bit too is a lot of north-south streets along these corridors, and how do I get from one side to the other? and can I go through these road closed signs? And the short answer is if it's signed and it's barricaded off, just to stay off of it. We are analyzing as our project moves along, as we go from phase to phase on these streets, is there intersections that we can open up? A good example is Wooddale at 44th Street. Can we open that intersection back up to allow north-south traffic and move all the barricades more the east-west direction? Knowing that traffic will still have to come to a complete stop at that location, be aware of any construction activities, vehicles that may be going through the work zone, but knowing that you could then cross and continue on in the future. Or with the rest of your route. So that's, I guess, a quick overview. I know there's maybe some additional questions I can answer from some of the members. And then the second part of it is that in response to some of the potential redirection of traffic and the lack of residents potentially using the detours as specified, City Council approved the installation of a temporary speed table. This is on Sunnyside, just east of Towns Road. It's the first one we have in town. Excuse me, and it's about this one's about 10 feet long and about 21 feet wide. It goes down in 3 to 4 hours of time by our public works staff, and could be down for a duration of a project or some shorter time period if necessary. But the goal here is to get driver behavior maybe somewhat readjusted. There's a desire to, or an understanding that these speed tables typically lower speeds a couple of miles per hour. Certainly as you go over the speed table, you'll have to drop down to 10, 15 miles an hour. But you're going to be right back up near the posted speed limit of 30 before you're done with your transition through this area. Secondly, there's probably a small diversion of traffic that will happen from a speed table like this. I will admit that one speed table along a corridor probably doesn't give you enough traffic diversion. It just will give you the traffic slowing. More of a series of speed tables would probably increase your diversion of traffic, transitioning that traffic to another location. But it's something that the engineering department is, like I said, asked staff or asked council to look into, and we purchased this one, and it goes together kind of like Legos, quite honestly. They just get laid out and they're interlocked together, and then they're screwed down to the pavement. So something that will certainly be off the pavement before the snow flies, and potentially sooner. I guess that's just kind of a quick overview and of some of the things that are going on in town, and I'll certainly answer any questions.
It's my understanding we've been asked to eventually look at a policy for using temporary speed tables.
That's correct. We have a number of policies at the city here for always stop signs, yield signs, pedestrian crosswalks. This is another policy that will need to be developed for the appropriate use of a device like this, or maybe even the continued use. We'll see how this test run goes. So I would certainly think that in the coming months, probably over the winter here, we'll circle back with the ETC, Traffic Safety Committee, and staff to come up with some kind of draft policy that makes this an appropriate device for our community, and how we're going to apply it in the future.
It's my understanding that the policy, or that future, although the council consented to this installation, future installations are going to be run past the ETC. That's what I remember from the comments.
Yeah, I certainly think that's the direction we need to head, that this I think we'll refine that a little bit better when we get the draft policy in place, and we'll understand what the proper approval process would be. But I think it needs to engage a larger group than just staff on these type of issues, for sure. So I could envision it certainly coming through the ETC.
And then for clarity on, okay, when you have like 70th or 44th under construction, and then the north-south streets that intersect, and people want to drive through those intersections, but it's marked road closed to through traffic, and there's a barricade, and maybe it's down to one lane, can people drive through the intersection lawfully?
It is my understanding that well, I guess I should clarify. Typically, those signs should be reworded to say road closed. Road closed to through traffic on in this case, the north-south streets is somewhat, well, maybe not the most appropriate language to be putting on there. Should just say road closed. Because obviously all those homeowners can get out, use the streets to the south, use the detours to the south and to the north. They shouldn't have to be anywhere near that intersection. And, we're mindful that this is not only for the safety of the residents who are, or the individuals who are navigating it, but also for our construction workers. A lot of these guys are driving large trucks that are unable to see as clearly, backing up, and large materials. We're routinely having a lot of activities that are somewhat dangerous. They're purging gas lines. They're pressurizing water mains. They're doing a lot of activities that potentially are threatening to their their work as well as the driver. So we just anticipate everybody stay off of those streets, and even the cut through, like you said, the north-south, crossing those intersections is to stay off them. They're barricaded for a reason. If they're not barricaded, then you can use them, but if they're barricaded, stay off them. That's kind of the practical application there.
And when you say barricade, you mean a barricade in the roadway, even if it's not blocking the travel lanes fully?
We typically have to leave at least what we call the type 3 barricades. It's the barricades that have the horizontal bars on them. There's usually 3 horizontal bars. We do have to always leave some of that area somewhat accessible for construction activities, as well as emergency personnel. Ideally, in some of these locations, we'd love to put concrete barriers up and just completely hard close these, but knowing that that's not an appropriate measure for emergency type vehicles, we do have to leave these somewhat exposed. And be mindful, too, that a lot of times we will close these things completely with these barricades, these orange barricades. However, it's quite often we see residents or drivers pull those off to the side so they can get through. And obviously, and that's been pulled off. Our staff doesn't know that they've been pulled off. And that's where that's where maybe, one individual leads to 2 or 3 and on. We routinely see people drive around these barricades, drive through people's front lawns, over flowers, whatever it might be, to get to where they want to go. And most of these individuals know that these are roads that are closed. And it's been going on for a number of months now as far as construction. It shouldn't be a surprise to too many individuals in our community.
Okay, well, if there are no more thoughts about that, we'll move on. Living Streets RFP update.
Staff is finalizing the RFP that we'll be sending out. We did at the last meeting ask for anyone with recommendations of what firms that they think should review or have a chance to respond to the RFP. And I received a couple that are on the list here. But if anyone else has additional firms, please do not hesitate to email those to me or give me a phone call, and I can add those to the list. Typically, these get sent out and picked up by a lot of firms across the community and even out of state. But if there's individuals you would like us to focus on or have some history with, we certainly can make sure that they're on the list to get a copy of it.
I think we're the researchers at the U of M. They were supposed to be on the list.
Thank you.
When the RFP is done, will you distribute it to us for our information, please?
Yes, I'll send out an electronic copy as well.
Thanks.
All members.
Okay. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Bike Edina Task Force update. Well, what I talked about the TLC. We have our magnificent chair has had to step down. Kirk Johnson did a fabulous job the past 2 or 3 years. He's still on the BETF, but is otherwise committed, so he can't continue as chair. So we have co-chairs now, Peter Kelly and Brad, forgive me for not saying your name correctly, Shappy? Do we know? Okay, well, it's great that they step forward, and they're going to do a fabulous job. And then the other thing we talked about is sort of where BETF would like to be in terms of structure. Would it like to be a committee of the Transportation Commission? Would it like to remain independent? Would it like to be its own board or commission? And the discussion kind of was started because, you know, now with our new ordinance, clearly multimodal, and now with our bylaws, we can have committees. You know, it just seemed to me the last thing we would want would be to have a competing bike committee when we have the BETF. And it's not, you know, an immediate issue, but thinking down the road, how do we work with the BETF? What's their role in the city, you know, organizational structure? And so we didn't get very far in that, but at least the topic was raised. That's all for that. Okay. Grandview. Paul.
The Grandview Small Area Study Update. I am missing a meeting right now, as well as Tom, as they've scheduled those for the same time as this meeting. There has been a letter of interest requested from interested firms in supplying their expertise to this process, and they're reviewing those right now. There was a meeting on Monday to discuss those responses that were due the week prior, and they're going to discuss those as well tonight. But unfortunately, I don't have a great update because, again, that meeting's, I'm not there and haven't seen it. I did review the letters. I don't know exactly how many were in there. There were, Tom, you saw those too, 15, 20 different letters of interest from firms interested in participating.
I reviewed about 8 of them, and I knew 3 of the firms pretty well from working with them in other parts of the country, and I made a recommendation on some of them and forwarded that to Carrie and to Kevin.
Kevin, yes. I did the same as well. I just recommended the ones that I felt portrayed what we were looking for the best. And
for this commission's sake, we're talking about primarily civil engineering firms, and in one case that I know of, one of the civil engineering firms attached an architectural firm to their team.
Well, thank you both for being part of that, and hopefully the meetings will be changed so that you can attend them and not have this conflict. 44th and 70th Street updates. That'd be Jack.
Thank you. Yeah, just you know, as an ongoing discussion item, we've been talking about how the 70th Street project is progressing now that we're into construction. And just yesterday, they have paved, and yesterday and today have paved the first phase of the project, which is from France Avenue to Cornelia. So they have about 3 more weeks worth of work in that phase to get the sod in, the rest of the sidewalk in, and then they'll be moving on and working their way down from phase 2 and 3, which is phase 2 would be from Cornelia down to West Shore and Wooddale West Shore area, and then from West Shore down to Highway 100 be phase 3. So they're making progress, moving along, and the goal is to get the phase 1 open to Cornelia School before the school season starts. Phase 1 does have the roundabout in it, and phase 1 also has the first of the 5-foot bike lanes that you'll be seeing along the corridor, and that's I won't say unique situation because more communities are starting to use it, but we have the wide gutter pan. It's a 5-foot flat concrete gutter pan, which will help to delineate the bike lane through the majority of the south side of the corridor and a little bit on the north side as well. Similar to what they've done over on 76th Street in Bloomington, over in Richfield, and then also what they've have used on campus in a few locations. So they're moving along. Like I said, it's making good progress, and we'll see as phase 2 will have phase 2 will have the pedestrian push button activated crosswalk at Wooddale and a few other amenities, and then phase 3 starts to get into the new signal at West Shore, and then phase 3 will also have the removal of the free right and the realignment of the CPC church entrance. So some of the key components of that study process, which was the pedestrian crossing improvements, and then also the vehicular conflict at the west end. So a couple things are moving forward there. We've already talked a little bit about 44th. They're moving along on that project as well, and anticipate a lot of that project being wrapped up in plenty of time this fall as well. So that one's a little less, I shouldn't say it's controversial. There wasn't as long of a study process on that one, so it's much more streamlined process at this point. But they're moving forward and making good progress.
Good. Thank you. Correspondence and petitions, I don't think we have any. And chair and commission member comments. So we'll start with Paul, and if you have something, share it. If not, say pass, and we'll just go down the road for the row.
All right. I just have one request that I requested, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, sometime last year, about as we're looking at the rebuilding of streets throughout the city. As we get to the concrete street areas, is there a plan, or what's going to be going? What type of rebuild are we looking at in those areas? And what is the concrete streets did not show up on that list of projects out 10, 12 years. So I'm just wondering if that's more than 10 to 12 years out.
Most of those streets, excuse me, have some additional life left in them. But however, we do expect that we need to kind of create a secondary mapping of how these streets are going to fall into the process. A reason being is that they're a little more expensive to remove, and then what is our anticipated type of pavement to replace them with? Is going to go back in as blacktop or as concrete? So we're starting to refine that process right now, and hopefully we'll kind of have a program in place and up and running for more of the local concrete streets in the coming year or so.
And then maybe more just of a local nature in the Brookview Heights area. There are several large cones, barricades over the sewers that have sunken. Is that work that is being proposed to be done? I mean, they've been there all spring and summer to date. I don't know if there's any plan for just maintenance of those, or?
Yeah, certainly. We have a considerable backlog of maintenance, and so the first step is to understand what the issue is, make reference to the issue, obviously, as a barrel or cone for residents and walkers, bikers, drivers, and then it goes on our list and is in the priority of as they were received. And certainly it's a time-consuming process. It will take us a good portion of the summer to get through.
Okay, thank you.
Ann? Pass. Ethan?
Just wanted to go back to the discussion on the volunteer transportation network. I thought that was a very intriguing idea, and I do think it warrants a little more discussion by us and perhaps a subcommittee to do a little bit more research into it, but that's very intriguing. So.
Yeah, thank you. Ellen?
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that comment, and I would be happy to help with a subcommittee. It was hard to figure out how much information to give you so we certainly can look more carefully at what people would be interested in and help us make a decision so that we can plan to move forward. I do think the only small urgency is that there's a couple of counties that are looking at this right now, and there might be some wisdom in being able to work together and share some expense, share some of bringing in speakers. I mean, there's some things underway, so I don't know how to expedite some of that, but we can talk. Maybe you can help me figure out how I can help with getting that moving.
Tom?
I think that we should be looking at the intersection of Interlochen at where it crosses Vernon or 50th Extension by the gas station, by where the Brookside comes up the hill by the gas station, and so on. Because, for example, tonight my wife and I were trying to get to Eden Avenue Grill, and it was impossible. We stayed there for 10, 15 minutes waiting because we had filled up with gas first. And then we tried to get back out onto Interlaken to turn left or right, and we couldn't do it. Finally, we were able to go right. She went down the hill, turned around, came back up, and I went all the way back down to Browndale, back to 50th, came all the way back down this way. So it's very difficult, and everybody who has a business around that intersection tells you, don't go through that intersection if you're on your way to Eden Avenue Grill, for example. Perhaps this could be part of what the transportation group of the small area study could be working on, but to me, it seems to be too big an issue, and that perhaps we can lend some support to the small area plan people to help to work towards solving that problem. Whether it's another traffic signal or what it is, we need to take a look at that.
Thank you. Catherine?
I have some information for the benefit of commissioners and the public's information on how transit, bike and walk fared in the recent state budget that was passed. So I can share that quickly. This is an update from a staff member at TLC. It's pretty rudimentary, but it can give some, I think, information. The commuter and passenger rail funds remained uncut, so I think that was well, I won't editorialize, but so that's one piece to be aware of. Transit fares are expected to remain the same. The 25-cent to 50-cent fare hike is going to be avoided for now. Also, in the short term, metro area transit service should remain largely intact, and despite a $51.7 million reduction in the biennium, Metro Transit plans to tap one-time resources to minimize service changes. And there may be slight reductions in a few city and suburban routes, but limited to typical reductions based on low ridership. In the long term, however, transit funding is more shaky. Federal contributions are expected to be reduced, and service providers are spending down their rainy day reserve funds. The revenue projections assume several rosy scenarios that will need to come true, or the shortfall will likely be worse in the years ahead. Met Council also received $20 million in state bonding to conduct additional studies on new transit corridors, and a handful of bicycle and pedestrian trails were included in the $500 million bonding bill, although I don't have details about where those are located. And the Complete Streets legislation that was passed in the last session remains intact, and also that, for the Commission's information, that the roads budget in the transportation bill was raised, and whereas most others were cut. And MnDOT was given an extra $43 million in the state bonding bill for repair and construction of roads, and none of that is to be directed to transit, bike, and walk. So just for information. None.
Okay. Thank you. Michael?
Just really quick. I'm not sure who else was copied on an email, but I got an email forwarded to me from Lynette from the city, I believe. Somebody on Point Drive had just emailed and was probably having a anyways, there was a bunch of garbage trucks on his road, just like every other street has on pickup day, and he just asked the question, why doesn't the city have a single hauler? I know that's not really our purview, but I said I would mention it at the meeting, so just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. I referred him to Diane Pluckett-Latham, who's the chair of the Energy and Environment Commission, and has a ton of information on that. And my memory is that they connected, that Diane contacted him about that issue. I think with that, I think we're done. So thank you, everybody. And let's move to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and it was seconded before it was moved. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Good. All right, it passes. Thank you. See you next time.